Hi and welcome to the Anti-Politica channel. I'm Jovan Grahovec. Today I wanted to make a follow-up video to the one that I made a couple of days ago in which I argued that the Democrat Party is so toxic and unreformable that the best thing that could happen to the United States in the upcoming election would be if the Democrats receive such a humiliating defeat that they end up collapsing and disappearing as a major political party and the force in the United States. This would create a chance for the American left to construct and build from scratch a genuine and honest left-wing party that's needed in pretty much any democracy. So given that this is the situation, given that we need an honest and genuine left-wing party, this would be in the interest of others, obviously Republicans, but also centrists and moderates. So I would like to share with them a list of reasons why voting against Democrats makes sense, even if that basically entails you holding your nose as you vote for Republicans, because the vote against Democrats, I believe, is important in this election precisely for this reason, that we need to move beyond the Democrat Party and replace it with a whole new, legitimate, honest, and constructive left-wing party. Here's a partial list of reasons why you should vote against Democrats, even if you're not crazy about their Republican opponents. The reasons that I will go over are not in any particular order because, as you will see, they are all important and legitimate, and I suspect that everybody will have their own favorite reason from this list. The first reason to vote against the Democrats is the warmongering that we have seen over the last 2 years since they assumed power and control of the Senate and the House and the presidency. The Biden administration has brought us to the brink of a nuclear confrontation with Russia, which is frightening. And moreover, it has sent billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine, effectively encouraging this carnage to continue, and this war in which Ukraine clearly cannot win, to basically be fought to the last Ukrainian. This has profound ethical and other geopolitical consequences that are negative for the world and the United States in particular, and I will post a link to a video that I made on this topic a couple of months ago. Nothing has changed, and all the arguments from that video stand. It's also true that Republicans have their own share of warmongers, and that they have started numerous wars when they were in power. However, we need to give credit where credit is due, and it's a simple fact that the only resistance in the House to the current madness and warmongering has come from the MAGA wing of the Republican Party. So think about them whatever you want, but it's true that they're the only ones that are raising their voices against the insane spending and the insane carnage that's going on in Ukraine. And it's also symptomatic to see that the left wing of the Democrat Party tried to send a letter calling for more diplomacy, but they were forced by the party's establishment to walk back that initiative. So this is additional proof that the Democrat Party is firmly controlled by the establishment, much of it warmongering establishment, and that it's not able to reform itself. And it also gives this also gives additional credence to Tulsi Gabbard and her arguments that are really all right on point regarding this issue. Democrats are the main carriers of warmongering in Washington these days, and the voters need to let them know how they feel about that aspect of their rule. So a vote against the Democrats is a vote against the war, no matter how counterintuitive it may seem given the history over the last couple of decades in the United States. The second reason to vote against Democrats are the economic problems and inflation that they have caused since assuming power. We can pretend all we want, but it's Econ 101 to understand that the massive spending bills are clearly a major factor in starting this wave of inflation. Clearly, some international issues have contributed, but this crisis in the United States is made internally by the Democrat administration. Moreover, they've had the audacity to call various bills names such as the Inflation Reduction Act, when in reality it was actually the opposite. And they have also had the audacity to gaslight the public by claiming that pretty much any spending on their cronies in the non-government sector and in business can be called infrastructure. So this is simply unacceptable, and a strong message needs to be sent that the public will not tolerate this kind of irresponsible economic policies moving forward. The third issue is censorship in collusion with big tech and mainstream media. This is something that should worry everybody, not just Republicans and independents, but also Democrats, because once censorship starts, who is to say that the next in line to be censored won't be the left wing of the Democrat Party when it starts to propose certain things that the establishment doesn't like. So this road towards censorship in the mainstream media and on social networks is a very dangerous one, and we, the public, need to raise our voices, especially when we are faced with the danger of condoning censorship because voices that we don't like are censored. This is a dangerous road to take because you have no guarantees that the next in line won't be you and your ideas. Moreover, as Mussolini has said, the essence of fascism is a merger of political and corporate power. I made another video on that, to which I will post a link, and this kind of emerging trend of censorship and collusion between the Democrat Party and big media and big tech companies and media company has a distinct flavor of an emerging corporate fascism, which is even more reason to vote against Democrats, because this trend is something that should worry everybody, and everybody's turn will come up sooner or later, so we'd better stop this trend right now. The fourth issue that I want to talk about is what I called COVID fascism, since we are talking about fascism in our previous point. Democrats and Democrat governors and mayors and wherever they were in power, they used the epidemic to introduce the most draconian closure and very restrictive measures across the board, and they have led in vaccine mandates, even though vaccines have proven not to stop the spread of the virus. Biden himself and his head of CDC, Rochelle Walensky, received multiple shots and yet contracted the virus subsequently. So there is no public health justification for widespread vaccine mandates and draconian measures, and yet Democrats have led the country in this insanity and are refusing to back down. They're still enforcing vaccine mandates. They're being imposed on our soldiers, nurses, students in Democrat-run states, and state universities are universally exposed to these vaccine mandates, and this poses serious questions about our medical freedoms, our privacy, and so forth. And it seems that the Democrat Party is prioritizing its relationship with Pfizer and other big pharma companies over the individual rights and medical freedoms. So this goes back to that idea of corporate fascism, and this is something that's really frightening, and it's a very, very strong reason to vote against Democrats in this election. Again, this is not to say that Republicans are perfect. There are many rhino states in which we see similar policies, but at least there is some resistance among some Republicans to this madness. And again, this is something with which we can work, but the Democrat Party seems across the board aligned with Pfizer and Big Pharma, and this is, again, a strong reason to vote against Democrats in the upcoming election. Reason number 5 I want to talk about is the increase in crime and problems with policing in this country. Nobody in their right mind would argue that policing in this country is perfect and that there are no problems. Faced with the George Floyd incident and other horrible stories that we saw over the recent past, that's all a reason to actually study, make investments in training, technology, oversight, and other kinds of investments to improve things. I'm yet to see an example of something that got improved by defunding it, by cutting funding from it. If you starve something of the funding and resources, it can only get worse. And this is precisely what we have seen in Democrat-run cities and states, where police departments have been defunded, morale has gone down, resources have gone down, and surprise, surprise, we have seen an increase in crime. So this is something that's clearly to blame the Democrat Party for. They have instituted these insane policies without preparing alternative and better mechanisms to enforce laws and provide security. And ironically, even though they set out to provide more racial justice, I believe that this increase in crime has disproportionately affected communities of color, which is an ultimate irony and a very strong reason to vote against Democrats. We need more responsible management, more responsible leadership of important government functions, which includes security and safety and policing, and Democrats have really dropped the ball here, and they need to pay the price for this at the polls. Reason number 6 to vote against the Democrats in the upcoming election are their energy policies and the price of fuel, the price of gasoline. It seems that the party has been taken over by ideological zealots who want to phase us out of fossil fuels on a very accelerated schedule, even though they haven't really developed and prepared and provided reliable alternative sources of energy. If we all switched to electric vehicles tomorrow, which is impossible, but let's assume that we can do it, I don't think that we would be able to charge our cars given the current capabilities of our electric grid. So this is, again, just like defunding police departments was irresponsible and caused problems. Democrat energy policies have been irresponsible and are causing huge problems to our economy, living standards, and many families are struggling with their fueling costs and the bills to fill up their cars and be able to go to work and school and so forth. So a very strong reason to vote against this insanity and send a clear message on Tuesday. Reason number 7 to vote against the Democrats are their immigration policies and the situation on our southern border. We see utter chaos. We see lots of lives lost. We see families and children being forced to walk across the desert and swim across the Rio Grande River, and that's something that's completely unacceptable. No matter what you think about immigration and what our immigration policies should be. If you think that all immigrants should be welcomed, there is no reason why that cannot happen at regular border crossings, and why these people shouldn't use regular roads to get here. If you think that the border should be tightly controlled and that immigrants should be vetted, again, this should happen at US consulates abroad and at regular border crossings. This kind of chaos where people pay human traffickers to smuggle them across the border is something that's clearly unacceptable. Democrats control the House, the Senate, and they have the presidency. They could have established any system, any orderly system that they want, and yet they have failed to do so. So a legitimate question to ask is, why are they tolerating this kind of chaos and this kind of humanitarian disaster, and who is benefiting from this? Why is this happening? This is unacceptable, and they had 2 years to fix it, and they didn't do that, and that's a very strong reason to vote them out of office. Reason number 8 to vote against the Democrats is that the party has this very ugly habit of dangling certain issues in front of their voters in the run-up to every election, only to forget everything about it in the aftermath of the election. So they have this habit of talking about Medicare for all and codifying abortion rights and various liberal measures about minimum wage and so forth, and they never seem to get around to voting about these measures. The natural question to ask in this particular moment is that they have been in power for 2 years. They've had control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they haven't done anything about these issues and never put them to vote. Comedian Jimmy Dore has really spoken eloquently about the issue of Medicare for all, and he's a strong proponent of developing a whole new left-wing party to replace Democrats because of their dishonesty on this issue. So their disdain for their own voters and the persistent gaslighting is a good reason to say, okay, enough, let's try something else and vote them out of office and basically leave them for good. Reason number 9 to vote against the Democrats is their disdain for and gaslighting of the moderate and centrist voters. If you remember campaign in 2020, they never campaigned on raising fuel prices and Build Back Better and insane spending bills, and if anything, they promised normalcy and that nothing major would change. However, once they got power to do things, they completely forgot about these promises and started to pursue very extreme policies that we see the effects of these days. So this gap between promises and what's actually done needs to close, and this gap was probably never as big as it is today. So Democrats need to be punished at the polls for basically deceiving moderates and centrists and pursuing very, very extreme policies for which they didn't get the approval of these voters. Reason number 10 to vote against the Democrats is the erosion of the rule of law that they seem to have pushed over the last decade or so. We have spoken about the situation on our southern border. Here it's important to note that there is a whole bunch of immigration laws that would be helpful, but the current administration is refusing to enforce. Similarly, we see that lots of district attorneys and many people in the justice system are selectively choosing not to apply certain laws that they deem racist, xenophobic, or what have you. We cannot have that. If you want to have a rule of law, that means equal rules for everybody. That means similar punishments for similar misdeeds and consistency across the system. If the executive branch and various government agencies become free to pursue whatever laws they want and not enforce others, you have a breakdown of the rule of law. So even though this is number 10, it could probably be number 1 just as well, because the rule of law is crucial for any prosperous democratic country. So the erosion of the rule of law that we have seen under the Democrats, wherever they were in power, is something that's very dangerous, something that should give us pause, and something that should be a really strong reason for us to say no and vote them out of office wherever we see them. As if 10 reasons weren't enough, we could also talk about numerous other issues such as cancel culture that's making a lot of people fearful to speak up, damage done to our education system, women's sports, and so forth. I'll stop here and just summarize by saying that the Democrat Party seems to have become so toxic that its brand equity is negative at this point. The party is thoroughly corrupt and unable to change, as the experience of Tulsi Gabbard and previously Bernie Sanders movement can testify. So it's in the interest of the American left to start from scratch and build a whole new party to represent certain liberal and left-wing interests and issues. This is not to say that the Republicans are perfect, far from it. I have referenced some of those problems as I went along these reasons, but that's something that I believe we should work on next, once we really deliver a punishing defeat to the Democrats, hopefully on Tuesday. Moreover, that process of building an honest and genuine left-wing party will not be easy, but that's the road we have to take given the situation that we are in. So this is clearly a radical proposition, but it seems that a lot of people are just sick and tired of the Democrats and all the toxicity and all the damage that they have done to this country. So I believe that the priority number one would be really to deliver a resounding defeat to the Democrats on Tuesday, and then we can take the following step after that. But that's a topic for another video. So good luck to everybody. I encourage, of course, everybody to go get out and vote, and I'll see you soon.